tell you what, there's certain videos that you don't think you're ever going to do. And this was one of them at the start of the year. And especially once the year began for the Carlton Football Club. So in this video, we are going to unpack everything and put it all on the table as to the current situation with Jack Silvagni and his reported offer from the Collingwood Football Club, and really just unpack everything about this situation, lay it all out there, and then at the end we can have a discussion in the comments below around what in the world is A, going on, and B, do we entertain this? So this all began really early in the year. Jack Silvagni hadn't been offered a contract. He did provide a quote relating to this, that it hadn't been done yet, but in no uncertain terms, he was sure that it would get sorted out or it would be looked at later in the year. I never really feared for Jack leaving, ever, and it's still a bit of a shock to me. But what we have seen this week is a complete turn of events. So this all started with a story that was broken by Sam McClure and The Age, and also on Footy Classified.
Hey Sam, we've known for several days now that the Collingwood Football Club has an interest in Jack Silvagni. Have they officially tabled an offer for him?
So it's a 4-year deal, which is essentially the almost identical deal to what he's been offered at Carlton. Now, the money might be slightly more, but both offers are in the mid-600s per season. Both 4-year deals, so no trigger for a fifth, which we thought may have been the case. But the interesting thing here, Lordo, is that what it means is if he was to leave Carlton and play for Collingwood next year, it wouldn't be about the money. So that paints a reasonably dark picture about, I guess, the frustrations in the playing group at Carlton right now.
I've said openly many times about openly looking at for free agents. You know, unrestricted free agents is something that we want to continue to explore, and whether it's Jack or someone else, we'll step into that, and because we don't want to stand still. We want to be better than what we are now next year, and we'll look at avenues to bring players in that we think that can do that.
You met with him? Would you meet with him?
I would meet with Jack, yeah, if that was something that was important to us.
So some interesting commentary there relating to the offer, the term being not dissimilar to what Carlton were offering, and if he were to go, that might give a bit of a window into the fact that this is less about money and more about the environment, which paints a pretty poor picture for the Carlton Football Club. So there's that. Naturally, a lot of supporters up in arms, seen it all throughout the week. We thought Matt Kennedy was a heart and soul player when he was booted off last year. I think Jack Silvagni, how many heart and soul players can you have? I'm not sure, but if Matt Kennedy is heart and soul, then Jack Silvagni is definitely heart and soul. So that's the first stage to this story. Then a few days later, we had some reports via Caroline Wilson and even some input from Dale Thomas around this story. So we'll start with Caroline Wilson. She reported where Graham Wright had stepped into this conversation.
Become personal for the Carlton board and for the Carlton membership. Up until yesterday, really, this deal, and I think it was 6 or 8 weeks ago that Carlton offered Jack Silvagni a 4-year deal. For the first time, really, he's a serious free agent and a serious player on the free agency market. Well, yesterday, I think the realisation from Graham Wright that this was becoming a major issue and that Jack mightn't realise just how much he is wanted at Carlton prompted Graham Wright to get in touch with Jack Silvagni. They had a long conversation. I think Graham Wright is genuinely concerned for Jack. He would know that this would be something that is absolutely tearing him in two about what he's going to do. Collingwood, it's been reported, have pretty much matched the Carlton offer. Now, for some people, this would just be unthinkable. Right,
so some suggestions there. And again, it's really tricky to try and sift through all of this information because it's all reported in the media. And as we always know, there's the media and the way they report, there's what the club will say and their position on things, and then somewhere in between is the truth. So Graham Wright has reportedly stepped into this situation and had his input. Now, Dale Thomas made some interesting comments as well.
I'm obviously very good mates with Jack. We don't speak about matters of this nature purely for the fact that there is such a conflict. But reading between the lines with all of this, so Collingwood and it became rumoured that they'd put an offer to Jack. And at that point, I think Graham Wright really went, right, is this for the first time something we have to seriously consider and make sure it is known to Jack Silvagni how wanted he is by this football club, not just by the members, but also how loved he is internally and how valued he is actually as a player. Take away the romance of the father-son and everything like that. But the next part is, in making some phone calls today and ringing around other Melbourne clubs, nobody else really thought this was ever going to happen. It was Jack Silvagni, he's Carlton, he's rusted on, the old man's a legend, etc., etc., etc. Today, now that the door has been left ajar a little bit, there's other Melbourne clubs that have gone, OK, we're sensing opportunity here. There's a chance that we may be able to pry him out, and it's not just Collingwood now that are in the running to try and secure his signature.
Right. So you've got a player in Jack Silvagni who I think this year was the first time I felt he had really locked in his spot. I mean, we went into 2025 as Carlton supporters with a big question mark at the start of 2025 around, okay, what is going to be the makeup of this backline and who's going to become that 2IC to Jacob Wiedering? And that was a question mark. Pretty quickly, Jack Silvagni established himself as that. Played at a really high level in the back half, seemed to just click really well with Jacob Wiedering. And there are very few defenders in the competition who compete the way Jack does, but also have the skill by foot. He kicks on both feet. We saw a few highlights throughout the year. I still remember that move against the Saints. And so, from a purely on-field footballing perspective, and, what is Carlton lacking? A lot, but on the field in particular, that real competitive edge and spirit, and also foot skills, which I think Jack has both of. So if you're Collingwood, it makes total sense. Of course, he'd be perfect. I think there are quite a few other clubs that would use Jack Silvagni's services really well, and reward him as such. So there's that part to the equation. Then there's this next part around, okay, Carlton will have to step up here and match the offer, increase the offer. It's been reported that the offers are not dissimilar, as I said. Depending on who you speak to, they're similar, or Carlton have lowballed. Reality is Jack is faced with a decision here. So you've got the loyalty, you've got the family connection. I don't think anyone in the Carlton fan base or just in the Carlton family as a whole doubts what Jack Silvagni means. Not just him as an individual, and his family lineage to the Carlton Football Club is a really important part of the identity, given it's a third generation player here. But as I said earlier in the video, it's what he actually does on the field. The skill and the competitiveness is something that Carlton is seriously lacking, and the commitment on the field. So I think that's the most important thing here. Like, what are we getting on the field from the player? Now, to balance the discussion, you've got the fact that, okay, he's had a lot of injuries, doesn't play full seasons for the most part. So you've got to balance that into the equation. Then you've also got this impending situation of change at the footy club. Is the head of football, is the list management team, is the coach going to be there next year or in the foreseeable future? Which players are going to be there for the foreseeable future? We've gone through the Charlie Curnow story last week. He shut it down to afl.com.au, but you just know that story will linger until he's maybe playing in round one next year or not. So there's that. There's clearly something that's gone on inside the club which has caused unrest, whether it's the playing group amongst themselves or the playing group in the club, or whatever. So that part hasn't been revealed yet, but there's clearly dysfunction. So if you're Jack Silvagni, you've just had a child, you've got to look out for yourself, and that's fair enough. He's played the 100 games at the club. He's done what he's needed to do. So from a smart business decision, if you take the emotion out of it, I mean, going and playing elsewhere and jumping ship from a dysfunctional environment could be the play here. But there is the other side to the story, and that's where, the magic of football, lives. I mean, he's so well loved within the Carlton fan base. And, in an environment, I don't know how much he's loved in the environment inside the four walls. I can only assume that he is, but I don't know. But I know for sure in the fan base, he's just so loved. That whole family is loved. And, you know, you've got this complexity to the story where the relationship with his dad has broken down between he and the club. It seems irreparable and irreversible. So there's always been this dark spot. You know, the fallout multiple times when, you know, at the end of Steve's career, and then also when he left the club after being the list manager for a while. So there's a few situations at play here. You've got Harry O'Farrell, who has emerged a little bit in 2025. You've got Harry Dean, who's now being spoken about as a father-son that's going to come into the club. So, you know, all of a sudden you've got a defence which looks like, you know, Wiedering, and you're going to want to get more games into O'Farrell and Harry Dean. And I'm very mindful of putting too much pressure on these kids who have barely played. I still think they'll need some seniority around them to help them develop, particularly in the early stages of their career. So there's a reality here where if you're Jack, are you asking the question, like, am I going to be playing for the 4-year deal? Am I going to be playing, or am I going to be on the outer? This is a guy that constantly has found himself throughout his career, whether it's due to his performance or whatever the case may be. He has been dropped at times, and he has been shifted around. He was a forward, a half forward, a small forward, and then he was a ruck for a little while there when we needed him. And that's the other part that I think is appealing about Jack Silvagni. He just plays wherever. I've been at functions before and seen him speak, and he's been asked about it, and he said, I don't care, I just want to play. I'll do whatever the team needs. So from that attitude standpoint, I think that's crucial, and I don't know if you can lose that, combined with the fact that he bleeds the place. And yeah, I really do worry about what it would look like without him because of the care factor for the club. Then there's the other part of the story where, is this what might need to happen as a bit of a fuck you to the club, to say, hey, the environment's broken down. You've potentially lost a Silvagni. You've lost a guy that absolutely loves this place. The environment is so toxic. And is this the line in the sand that actually turns heads, whips necks, and makes everyone on the inside realize, like, we have to get our shit together? I don't know. We will follow this story very closely, but how do you navigate through this story? So I've seen a bit of discourse around it. You know, the business decision, put the club first. You got to make the tough calls, but just don't make the tough calls around certain players. Do you think this is just a reality of life because of the dysfunction that's gone on at the Carlton Football Club, and we might need to lose a few of these guys that we love in order to move forward? Is it a rip the Band-Aid off situation and start again? Or can you build for the future with Jack Silvagni? Do you think he will actually leave Carlton? Do you think when it's all said and done, he will leave? And do you think he will play for Collingwood in 2026? I'm very curious to get your thoughts on this situation. We will continue to cover it as the developments unfold, and we'll go from there. Go Blues.